Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Second Timothy, chapter 1. That is our text for today. So let's go ahead and look at this. Therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord. So, he introduces, like, he says hi to Timothy, his beloved son, and then he just goes on to kind of go to the exhortational part. Therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me, his prisoners, but share in suffering for the gospel by the power of God. And this chapter is just so packed and so filled with many things. But for today's DT, I just wanted to kind of focus on the topic of shame, because it actually comes up again and again. In today's culture, which is a culture colored by centuries, maybe millennia, of Christianity. Not our country, but I guess our West, the culture, right, has been colored. Now it's kind of seen as cool to go to prison for a cause. It's kind of considered like maverick and awesome and things like that. But in cultures that are not colored, that's definitely not the case in the Greco-Roman culture or the Jewish culture, and especially in cultures that are. You can even see this in cultures that are not colored by millennia of Christianity, such as Asian cultures. It's actually, if somebody goes to prison, it's just simply seen as something really shameful, at least incompetent. How could you get yourself into a situation like that? You lost. So you must be shady, or at best, just dumb. So that's sort of the assumption. So this chapter's theme: don't be ashamed, of the testimony about our Lord, nor of me. So yeah, like I'm ashamed to be associated with Apostle Paul. That's what he's saying. He's like, don't be ashamed of me like that.
Yeah, so I was thinking about do not be ashamed about the testimony about our Lord, and how somehow, even though our country is colored by the Western culture that has been colored by Christianity, we are still made to be ashamed about the testimony about our Lord, about Jesus, or about being anything like Jesus. And even though we're not doing anything wrong, and just simply trying to love people or share about God and Jesus, like, we're made to feel ashamed because we're not going along with what the world, I guess, considers you should live for. Yeah. And so I was thinking that if there isn't some aspect where there's this kind of like, I guess, feeling that I'm not going along with the world, there's something wrong. I mean, it's just going to come along with being a disciple of Christ.
Yeah, shame, the sense of like being...
Yeah, there's just weird or an oddball. Yeah. And you're made to feel ashamed that you're not doing the same things or buying the same things or watching the same things as other people.
Yeah. I think that's actually kind of a subtle form of shame that we all feel universally. I think a much more powerful and direct form of shame that this passage is talking about, that might also be very applicable to us in a more direct way, would be something like very fact that there are outstanding accusations, and there are some sources, some people, some government that says, yeah, well, I'll imprison you because of those accusations. When there's outstanding accusations, there's this assumption that you did something wrong, right? I think, and maybe we're ashamed of that. Are we? Like I think the application would be like some those kinds of online accusations, and there's just an automatic assumption like, oh man, like, okay, what did we do wrong? Like we must have done something wrong. Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah, like there are some accusations, of course, that might be legitimate.
So that's like the way that they might have assumed Apostle Paul did something wrong because he's in prison?
Yeah, that's sort of I'm kind of channeling the Greco-Roman, maybe / Asian culture's interpretation of somebody ending up in prison. Like, you must have done something wrong. Like, how could you end up this way? I'm not in prison. You're in prison. So like, some people think that you deserve to be in prison, so that must mean that you did something wrong. So it's like that, I guess. Like, yeah. Just simply because there is an accusation, we must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong, right? So, but Apostle Paul says, don't be ashamed, right? Don't be ashamed. Like I said, there are some accusations that we need to like adapt and to improve on. But frankly, we all know that there are accusations that are simply because we follow Jesus in a radical way. Like, for us to say, like, how dare you, like people would say, how dare you say that church has an authority to speak into every area of your life? Like, who are you? Like, you're not my mom. That kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. The fact that we say that career is not the main and highest calling for a Christian. Mm-hmm. I mean, people are going to accuse us of all sorts of things because of that. Mm-hmm. So we say, oh man, like, but there are these accusations, so we feel ashamed. So the Apostle Paul says, don't be ashamed of the gospel, nor of me, his prisoner. Right, so there's a shame by even association as well, because Timothy seemed to be maybe shrinking back or something like that. At least Apostle Paul seemed to be afraid of that, right? So Apostle Paul's not ashamed because he says, I am not ashamed though. For I know whom I have believed, and I am convinced that he's able to guard into that day that has been entrusted to me. So there's this I know whom I have believed, and then there's this kind of his mind, in other words, his eyes turn to Jesus, whom we have believed, whom he has believed, and then his mind also turns toward that day. Until that day, look toward heaven when God will judge. He's the final judge, and on that day, I will meet the one whom I have believed. And then I think we can actually fight against that weird social shame and all those things because as we turn our eyes toward Jesus and turn our eyes toward that day when we finally will meet the one that we have believed, who said, you cannot serve both God and money. Who said, if you put your hand on the plow and look back, you're not worthy to follow me. Who said, if anyone wants to follow me, you must deny himself. He must deny himself and take up this cross daily and follow me. And let him be the judge over how we try to live our Christian lives in a radical way. So
I think that's the way that we guard ourselves against shame, is by knowing Jesus and the words of Jesus, like what you just quoted, that's the gauge and standard and calibration, and not the things that we're made to feel ashamed of.
Yeah. Knowing him and knowing that we will one day meet him and he will be the judge. So that gives me strength. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.